Good evening.
Good evening.
Topic this evening is the power and impact of music, consciousness and connection through song. We could theoretically spend hours and days and even years on this subject. There are countless sources we find in Shas, in Rishonim and Achronim, in the Litvish world, in the Hasidish world. The goal, though, is not to have an encyclopedic, comprehensive survey of all the different sources, but rather try to focus in on appreciating the power of Shira, and practically speaking, how can we tap into that power and bring more of that into our lives and into our experience. The Ramban famously says, Ein begashmi is dak ki b'muzika. What do you think muzika means? Translation, there is nothing in the physical realm that is as sublime as music. So it's within the world of Gashmi, but it's the closest thing we have to Ruchani. Ein begashmi is dak ki b'muzika. The Zohar tells us that music is really all around us, within this world, within all worlds, to the point where Amole de b'nei alma, it min liba, stim min einein, if not for the fact that human beings, we have a heart that's covered, we have eyes that are closed, if not for that, Lo yochlin lemeikam, we would not be able to stand, we would not be able to survive. Mikol neimosa de gilgalosa de shimsha, because of that overwhelming, beautiful, pleasant song of the radiant sun, kad notel meshabeach kamei kud shabrichu, as the sun is praising Hashem, so to speak. And that's just one of the hundreds of billions of celestial beings all coming together in this universal Shira. And the Zohar is telling us, if we weren't protected, if we weren't closed and sheltered, and we were actually exposed to the reality of the Shira all around the universe, we wouldn't be able to survive. That's pretty intense. Based on this idea, it's interesting to note the famous story in Nach with the Assyrian army waging war, about to wage war against Yerushalayim during the times of Chizkiyahu. And then we had the miracle that the entire army was found dead, totally demolished without having to lift a finger. So what happened? How did they die? The Gemara in Sanhedrin says, Aznayim gilu lehem vishomu shira mipi chayos umesu. Hashem allowed their ears to hear the song of the Chayos HaKodesh, right? The song of the highest level of Malachim, and they couldn't stand that level of intensity, and the entire army died. The Alter of Slobodka points out that the Gemara does not say Hashem gave them the ability to hear beyond human potential. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave them the koach hashmiya more so than a regular human being. The Gemara does not say that. Rather, it's gila lahem. HaKadosh Baruch Hu revealed, He allowed them to hear the shira of the Chayos HaKodesh, and that they couldn't take. It was too powerful, it was too overwhelming. But that means, says the Alter of Slobodka, that we have the capacity to actually hear the Shira of the universe. If we're not on the Madrega, if we're not ready for that intensity of Shira, that could kill you. But intrinsically, we have that innate ability to tap in to this magnificent, overwhelming song that's all around this world and all of the Olamos. That's looking above and beyond ourselves. If we look within ourselves, within the human soul, we also have Shira. David HaMelech speaks of this inner song when he writes, Laman yizamercha chavod v'lo yidom. After thanking Hashem for becoming healed, he was very ill and he was zocha to refuah. He said, thank you, Kadosh Baruch Hu, for allowing me to live and to continue. For what purpose? Why do I care to be alive? Laman yizamercha chavod. That my glory, that my honor should sing to you and it will never be silent. What does that mean, my glory should sing? What's the glory of the human being? What's the kavod ha'adam? It's the neshama. The Rishonim explain that David HaMelech is saying in Tehillim, my neshama is singing out to you, Hashem. V'lo yidom, and it will not be silenced. Elokai li'olam odeka, forever in this world and the next, I will continue to praise and to sing to you. This is the music within the neshama. We find in some of the Hasidic writings a lot of focus on this realm of Shira. In particular, from the Piyazetzner Rebbe, the Eish Kodesh, he speaks about the potential great pain that a human being can experience if he's disconnected from that inner world of song. There's a tsar, there's an anguish that I could experience if I'm not able to tap in and break through to that inner shira. Ma godol ha'ke'ev ka'asher gam nafshenu v'nishmosenu me'yitonu nisgaros. How great is that pain when we feel like our neshama, our soul is closed up. Kahamon melachim memakelo shirosam, just like the multitudes of angels in their thunderous chorus, nafshenu tirash, our soul storms with song as well. A very poetic way of explaining that on one hand we have all of this song, all of this celestial music within the universe, but we also have that same angelic shira within ourselves, within the neshama. Rav Kook, when he writes about this inner music within the soul, he says, Shiras Kodesh Nishmas B'meromei HaNeshama. Just like there's Shiras Kodesh, there are holy, sanctified nigunim, so to speak, out there in the vastness of the universe, so too B'meromei HaNeshama, within the vastness of the neshama, we find those same songs of Kedusha. But he reiterates the point that the Eish Kodesh made. He also speaks about a potential for feeling somewhat disconnected or even depressed if we're not able to tap into that inner shira. Eish Kodesh writes, Rav Kook rather writes in the Shmona Kavotzim, he says sometimes a person feels down, he feels disconnected, and he or she is not quite sure where it's coming from. And often he says that we could point to more superficial issues that we might be struggling with. However, al pi rov, the majority of the time, when there's something churning within us, and there's a feeling of despair, of disconnect, of depression, kishemechapsim umotzim eza siba lematziv nafshi, raksi b'shirchis. It's only superficial. The majority of the time, we're not able to break through and get to a deeper level of really finding out what's going on within me. Why am I troubled? Why am I feeling held back right now? But says Rav Kook, the truth is that harbe yoser amuka, there is so much more depth within ourselves that we usually don't even think of or search for. And ha'atzvon ha'ruchani, there could oftentimes be a spiritual sense of despair. Hu a chomer shel shiras haneshama. This feeling of depression could actually be the material, the substance of the shira of the neshama. Why would my inner song lead me to feeling any sense of disconnect or depression? So Cook says, Hitvia sheneshama tova'as es chovsha. The inner song within every human being is always craving and yearning for its freedom. This desire to express itself. Hi misavekis im kol halachotzim halochzim oso. It's pushing back against all of those barriers and limitations that are trying to keep it buried within me. Hi chefza chaye dror. The neshama wants more than anything a life of freedom. V'zehu sod etzvona, and this could be the secret behind my feelings of despair or depression. If I'm living a life where that inner Shira is not allowed to fully express itself, it's always stifled, it's held back within the background of my soul, within my psyche, then I'm not living, expressing that unique song that I have, and there's going to be a feeling of emptiness. There's going to be a feeling of despair. These are lofty ideas. On one hand, we speak about the Shira in the universe, around us, and we also speak about the Shira within us. To delve a little bit deeper, we could ask the question, where does that Shira within us come from? Right? I get it that the Malachim, they're singing Shira, whatever that looks like, whatever that sounds like. Why is it, or from where does the human soul have this capacity, have this nature of Shira? Where does that come from? So there's a famous comment of the Manos Halevi. The Manos Halevi is the commentary of Shlomo Kalbitz on Megillas Esther. And we're not going to delve into the whole piece right now, perhaps at a different discussion. But one thing that he points out is he says that nigun v'hamuzika davar ya'ariv lenefesh. A melody, song is something that could be so sweet and so pleasant and feel so natural to the human neshama. Why is that the case? Because where does the neshama come from? Where are the origins of my soul? Where was I before I was placed here in the confines of this world? I was together with the Malachim. I was part of that greater, more expansive reality. I was part of that world of Shira before I was stuffed down here in the 3 or 4 dimensions of reality. And therefore explains of Shlomo Alkabetz, Shira is something that connects in such a deep way, more than speech, more than poetry. It doesn't matter how eloquent you are, every word that's said is something that's somewhat foreign to who I am. What's my mama lashon? What's my first language? My first language is Shira, is song. He explains, he says, that's why, ever wonder, when you're trying to put a child to sleep and you sing to the child a lullaby, it can be soothing, and sometimes it actually works to get them to sleep. What is it about singing a melody to a child that's so comforting? So explains the Manos Halevi, they've only been in this world for a short time. And therefore, although it's not conscious, obviously, they're not consciously aware of much, but internally, unconsciously, when you sing to them, you're bringing back something that's so familiar. This reminds me of home. And that's why it's so soothing. Practically speaking, what does this mean for us in our avodas Hashem, with our families? How do we incorporate the power of Shira into our lives? We've all been to different Shabbos tables before, and we know that everyone has a different personality. Some people enjoy singing, and they sing for much of the Suda. Others have no interest, and the bencher is never opened. Sometimes the father is into the singing, but the teenage boy or girl may not be. You always have a different dynamic depending on where you go. Is there a point of trying to cultivate in one's home, in one's daily or weekly experience of life in Judaism, is there a point of trying to develop an appreciation for song. And based on the power of music, the power of Shira, obviously the answer is yes. If you can, you should. The way the Pele Yoetz describes the avoda of Shira, he writes, Kol echad yishor al shulchano shirim noyim me'inyone diyoma. Everyone should accustom himself to sing al shulchano at his table beautiful songs that are about the time. If it's Shabbos, if it's Yontif, Dover be'ito ma tov. And then he says, V'zeh avodas Hashem chashuva ma'od. This is not just enjoyable. It's not just a cultural connection. This is avodas Hashem chashuva ma'od. This is very significant service of God. Shekol malachei morim v'chol tzava hamorim mishtamshim ba. What's my proof? That all of the angels use this form of serving Hashem. Avodas Hashem chashuva ma'od. Many people don't realize, but when you ask the question, when Moshe came down from Har Sinai, what information did he have with him? Torah shebechsav, Torah shebal peh, right? The mitzvos. Besides that, writes one of the Talmidim of the Gra, when Moshe came down from Har Sinai, he also had many nigunim that he brought with him. Melodies that HaKadosh Baruch Hu taught Moshe, so to speak, as part of the overall being makabel the Torah, was being makabel shiros v'tishbachos. And, writes the Talmud of the Gra, he says, some of the nigunim we have today can be traced back to those heavenly nigunim given to Moshe, and even ones that are not the exact same melody. Ultimately, it's been 3,300 years, but there's been a lot of erbuvia, right? The combination of different melodies, but much of that toche, much of that beauty can be traced back to Har Sinai. Practically speaking, when it comes to trying to develop a deeper appreciation for song, we have the following advice. This is from the Eish Kodesh, in the Sefer B'nai Machshava Tova. He writes as follows. He says, my intention, at least in this part of the Sefer, is not to speak about the entire inyan of nigun and the world of melody, but rather I want to teach you Eich yidle kol ish be'eze matzav shehu, how it's possible for every person, no matter what situation in life they find themselves, how can they draw from the mayim chayim mimkor nishmaso, from that pure wellspring of shira that's within the neshama. How do we break that dam and go into that mayim chayim mimkor nishmaso? So he writes as follows. You don't have to be a composer. You don't have to write your own melody. Not all of us are as talented as Gabe to create our own music. It's interesting, the Pele Yoetz actually says, if you can create your own nigunim, that's even better. Because then it's really an authentic expression of that unique shira that's within you. But the Eish Kodesh tells us, you don't have to be that creative. Rather, what you could do, Kach lecha eze tenua shel nigun. Take any aspect of a melody that resonates with you. And take a moment, you don't have to do this for 45 minutes, but take a moment at some time during the day. Tiskor es einecha v'tachshuv shuv. Close your eyes and envision that you're standing before the infinite Borei Olam. It's only me and the HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and although I have so many other things going on in my life right now, and so many responsibilities and emails to return and phone calls and errands to do, right now, Tizkur es einecha, I close my eyes, and it's only me and you. Ubeshviras libecha, and with the brokenness of heart, shviras libecha doesn't mean with a sense of despair or hopelessness. but it's breaking through, not feeling that cold disconnect. Basa lishboch es nafshecha laHashem b'shira. Bring yourself psychologically to be able to sing shira to Hashem. V'nigun hayotzi mikereb libcha, that it should be a melody coming from the depths of your heart. Doesn't have to be something that I composed myself, but it's a nigun that rings true with me. Sing it to Hashem. And it's possible that you could feel Eza hargosha she'efshar l'cha l'tzayer mata margish. You could begin to feel something that you can't even describe in words. Almost like a childlike excitement. K'yelid shemischate, like a child leaping or dancing lifnei aviv, in front of his father, to the point where he calls out, Avi, Avi, my father. And he responds, yes, Mata rotzebani, what can I do for you? You keep on calling me. And the answer of the child is, Klum, nothing, I'm good. Tati, what do you want? Nothing, I'm okay, I'm just calling your name. Says the Eish Kodesh, it's possible to tap into that childlike excitement with a melody. And then he adds one layer, which is very fascinating. He says, the truth is, Kidal lecha shebe'inyan darchei hisgalus hanefesh. When it comes to the revelation of the soul, the expression of the neshama, yesh harbe pamin lilmod min hayeled. Oftentimes, we could learn from a child what that looks like, what that feels like. Kol ma'asav eino b'kavana. When a child does something, there's no kavana. When a teenager does something, there is no kavana. Right? Kol ma'asav bli kavana. Rak me'atzma nafsho misgala ba'ofanim shonin. It's almost like this automatic expression of enthusiasm. You could have a little kid just dancing and doing weird things. What was the thought process in this particular movement? There's no thought process. It's just natural. Says the Eish Kodesh, we could tap into something very similar, and we could learn from a child what it should or could feel like to have that sense of ruchnius. Eish Kodesh himself concludes in this piece, B'nai Machshava Tova. He says, therefore, when one finds himself sitting b'chevres chasidim, b'shah shemenagnim, imat tfilo b'suda. You're with a group of people during Shalosh Shudas. There's singing that's happening in the shul, or you're together with a group during a suda. And there's negunim, there are shiros, v'tishbachos, there are zmiros. Tiranein gamata imahem. Sing with them. Don't be too cool. Don't be too cold. Don't be too self-conscious. If you can't keep the key, please sing softly. But, Tiranein gamata imahem. Sing with them. Don't try to speak louder in your conversation so the singing doesn't bother you as you're talking about something extremely important. But Tiranein gam ata imahem. Sing with them. Take that opportunity to tap into that shira. It's not external. What you're really doing is going internally into that shira in the neshama, and you're trying to feel it, even to get a glimpse of that childlike ruchnius. He concludes by saying, Lav davka b'shah shata b'chevres chasidim. This is not only true when you're a group that's gathered together. In that case, obviously, take the opportunity. Join along with the shira. But rak gam b'beischa b'cholesh shetargish es atzmecha muchshar lezeh. Even if you find yourself alone, at home, wherever you may be, if you feel that swelling up, that desire within you to sing, don't squelch it. Bring it out, maximize it, cultivate it, develop it. That could change you, that could transform you. Even in the darkest of times, throughout our history, Song was always really that centerpiece. It was almost like an anchor of life and vitality. The Gemara in Taina says, both during the Churban Bayis Rishon and the Churban Bayis Sheni, as the destruction was actually taking place, Leviim hayu omrim shira va'omdim al duchana. The Leviim were standing there, right? You think of the Titanic, Lahavdil. Leviim were standing there al duchonim on their platform, and they were singing shira even as the Beis HaMikdash was being destroyed and burnt. Why were they doing that? Why do you continue singing shira even in the darkest of times? And it's not only something that took place thousands of years ago. We have stories. We have endless stories from very dark times in the not so far past. Rav Shach used to tell this story often. This is a story probably many of you have heard before. But those who were close with Rav Shach would say, whenever he would tell over this story, it was as if he was living that experience. He would tell over the story of the group of Jews that found themselves standing together in the gas chamber without any clothing on. And one mentions, knowing very well what their fate is about to be, that today is Simchas Torah. What do you do with that information when you're about to die in agony? And someone says back, we have nothing. We don't have a Torah. You're not going to make a l'chaim. What do you do? And the response was, it's true we have nothing. Oba l'maisa, we have a Kodesh Baruch Hu. Hashem is with us. Let's dance with Hashem. Let's dance and sing with Hashem. And Rav Shach, when he would tell over the story, at this point he would mamish shed tears, describing and almost reliving that rikida, that dancing. Dancing together without any clothing, without any future, holding hands, but connecting to a Kodesh Baruch Hu. Because even in the darkest of times, we could sing shira. When we sing shira in a situation that looks hopeless, there's something powerful that happens. Both psychologically and perhaps even metaphysically. In the Siddur Hagra, explaining the pasuk in Tehillim, Tov lehodos l'Hashem u'lezamer l'shimcha elyon, says the Gra, Gamim shocha le'ofer nafshenu. When is David HaMelech saying that it's pleasant lezamer l'shimcha elyon to sing to your uplifted name? That's true even if we're covered in mud. Al yedei tsar v'yogon she'over al roshenu. Based on experiencing pain, loss, anguish. What does the singing do? Nich yeshuv es libeinu al yedei zemer. Through the zemer, it could actually breathe life into that neshama. I've been pounded. I've been neglected. I've been the victim of so much. Why in the world would I sing? Leman yizamercha chavod. Because my neshama is meant to sing. And it's natural. It's indigenous. It's comfortable. Zamer l'shimcha elyon, because nich yeshuv es libeinu al yedei zemer, it could breathe life through the song. Le'orer bitochon bilvavenu al ha'asid, to actually awaken a sense of optimism, a feeling of bitachon, of hope for the future, that things might be different. The only way I'm able to see that is through nichya, breathing life into myself through the zemer. We know the Gemara says in Brachos that the gates of tears are never closed. Sharei demos lo ninol. In the Siddur of the Pele Yoetz, the base tefillah, he quotes from the Mekubalim. He says the Mekubalim tell us Sheyesh sharim mishamayim letfilos, that there are gates in heaven, so to speak, that our tfilos go through. V'yesh l'shiros. But there are also sha'arim. There are gates that are intended for the song. Upa'amim shesharei tefila ninalu. Sometimes the gates of prayer are closed. V'sharei shiros psuchim. But the gates of Shira remain open. And he tells a story of something that took place in Yerushalayim well before his time, that there was a drought and there were people fasting and davening and saying Tehillim, and nothing seems to be working. Finally, the Rav of one particular town gave different instructions. He said, no more fasting, no more tza'aka, no more crying out. He told them, let's gather together, b'simcha gedola, b'beis ha'knesses ha'gedola. Let's go to the shul and let us celebrate. They brought instruments and they were actually dancing together, and that brought the Yeshua. Somehow the fasting and the crying out wasn't powerful enough. And the way the Pele Yoetz describes it is that it's true. The gates of tears are never closed. And the bechia, a real passionate cry, could potentially get you in. However, the gates of Shira, when you come with Shira and with Simcha, mishaber bechitzos. You don't just get in through the gates, you destroy them, you break them down, you devastate them, and you move in forward. That's why Moshe, when he davened so many times for Hashem to allow him to get to Eretz Yisrael, the language of his prayer was Ve'eschanan. Ve'eschanan, Moshe says, I was pleading, I was begging. But the Balaturim explains Ve'eschanan b'gematria is Shira. Moshe was trying to utilize the most powerful tefillah in the world to be able to change Hashem's mind, to allow him to enter Eretz Yisrael. And therefore, explains the Balaturim, Sha'amar lefanav Shira kedei sheyishma tfilaso. Moshe Rabbeinu, he was singing Shira to Hashem. It wasn't just begging and pleading, but there was a Shira, hoping that that would be the force allowing him to go into Eretz Yisrael. So, Ein begashmi is dak, musica, like the Ramban told us, there is nothing as sublime, as powerful, as pure, as music, as song. Song is all around us. That is the language of heaven, so to speak. That's the Svas HaShemayim. This is the Avoda Chashuva of the Malachim, the very holy service of God, of the angels. And that same angelic nigun that exists in Shemayim also exists within us, within our neshama. Sometimes the pain we could experience in life is when we feel our unique song is being held back and we can't break through, we can't express it. One way to try to break the dam and become more in touch and more in tune with that inner Shira, Eish Kodesh tells us, try to cultivate, try to actually sing. Do something that might feel a little bit awkward. If you're alone, if you're with others, if you're with your family, try to bring it in more to our experience of Shabbos and Yontif and Shalashudis. That could be transformative. Take one niggin that resonates with you, and even in times that are not optimistic, even when there's darkness and confusion, we should also utilize the power of Zemer. That could bring us back to life. And ultimately to remember that it's true, the gates of tears are never closed, but when it comes to Shira, that could break open those mechitzos, allowing our tefillah to come closer to a Kadosh Baruch Hu. We should all sing b'shira, b'simcha, like the Malachim. Have a wonderful evening.